every time. It's not good enough.
Mr. Speaker, rather than respond to those comments, I think it's probably important at this time to remind us at this stage what this debate is about. It's a general debate of ideas. Well, there's another one of those Christchurch members banging on over there. Isn't that interesting, Mr. Speaker? Nearly up to $20 billion into the city, and you've got someone over there from that city who is banging on and doesn't know what he's talking about, like usual. But coming back to the point that I was going to make, and that is that I think there's one thing that we all agree on in this House, and that is to improve the standard of New Zealand. We need to improve the income of New Zealanders. I think we get pretty much universal acceptance of that. To improve the standards of living in New Zealand, we need to improve the income of New Zealanders. The only debate, Mr. Speaker, in the House today is how that may be done. And most of our opponents over here have put up an argument against every single thing that potentially could improve the standard of living for New Zealand. But I want to talk about the sector that I come from and represent, which is the primary sector. Food production is now not keeping up with growing world population. It is not keeping up with it. We are going to have a food shortage in the world within the next 15 years unless we become more efficient in our production of food from the agricultural sector. The agricultural sector, or the primary sector in New Zealand, represents 71% of our total merchandise export trade. Primary exports in March, up to March, for the 2012 year were $32 billion, Mr. Speaker. Now, the question that I have for the House in this debate is what would our opponents, if they were to be elected, that is a Green Labour government, do to this sector? Well, let's just have a look at what they've said they would do, for a start. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to introduce an emissions trading tax on methane from animals. The second thing they've said they're going to do is they're going to introduce a capital gains tax on the agricultural sector or on the business sector. The third thing they've said they're going to do is they're going to introduce a nitrate limit on the amount of nitrogen fertiliser that can be applied. The fourth thing they've said they're going to do is they're going to put a restriction on water use and the ban on irrigation in some areas of the country, or restrictions on irrigation in some. The fifth thing that they've said they're going to do is they're going to put a restriction on livestock numbers in New Zealand in some areas. None of these things are based in science. All of them are ideologically driven, and none of them stand up to scrutiny. We'll listen to the Green Party, no doubt, go on about the current discussions going on in regard to the Kyoto Protocol. Well, Mr. Speaker, when I hear the Green Party talking about that in the various conferences and protests and so forth they're going to, it reminds me a lot of a bunch of drunkens going to another booze-up to talk about the disadvantages of alcoholism. And you sort of cannot understand how they could be so, I know the word is not able to be used, but have such a double standard, if you like, that they would travel thousands of miles in aeroplanes around the world by the thousand to flash hotels to attend conferences to talk about what they could do to save the planet. Have you ever seen or heard such an oxymoron as that? China, Mr. Speaker, is now our second largest trading partner. And as we speak, there are members of Parliament being paid by the taxpayer protesting against free trade agreements and negotiations going on in this country at the moment. How is it that you can have a growing economy in a country where 71% of its export merchandise comes from a particular sector, but yet we are going to protest against the export of those products to the world? How is that? Someone will need to explain that to me slowly and thoroughly in a few moments. The largest company in this country, Mr. Speaker, is Fonterra. There is no doubt about that. And I can understand the concern from some that it does control such a high percentage of this country's export earnings. I can also understand some commentary that suggests it's the wrong structure, but I don't agree with them. And the evidence is that they're wrong. And I can do no better than to quote Gareth Morgan, who is often quoted as a commentator on various things. when he commented in 2004, "So far the industry has simply morphed into a vehicle for generation wealth for a class of land-owning, milk-producing suppliers whose development of the capital is well below its potential." Well, Mr Speaker, he is wrong.
Dennis O'Rourke.
Mr Speaker, the national government is